thank you so much for joining me. I'm Dustin Ganay at the LA UXR meetup. Really excited for you all to hear this talk from Khalil Sullivan. Really important topic for the time in which we live as researchers, as designers, and as people in general. AI and particularly leveraging AI for reporting. So when I first met Khalil, we were at a networking dinner, which I don't know if you all are familiar with those, but it can be a little awkward. You're kind of going into the situation where you don't know who's going to be there. It's kind of like you're all sitting at a table and everyone's not trying to sound smart, but maybe a little bit, everyone wants to be, put their best foot forward, in a kind of professional dinner like that. And Khalil like really kind of stood out to me because he was talking about what he's going to talk to us about today, which is at ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, where he's done a lot of his work. He basically was able to get research reporting from a few days down to a few hours. And he talked about this at the dinner, and it certainly caught my attention then, and it still catches my attention now, which is why I wanted to have him come and speak to the community here. Because as researchers, like that is one of the hardest things, right? Is like we're constantly trying to do good research, and then you get to that presentation research phase, and that can be very time consuming. In a world where AI is rapidly changing everything and timelines are getting more compressed and researchers are expected to output insights faster. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Khalil.
Thanks so much, Dustin. I'm going to start sharing the deck. At the same time, I'm going to give a shout out to coworker Michael Bulgarin, who's in the chat here today. A lot of the work I'm going to go over in this case study was headed by Michael, who took the lead on guiding our team through this process. So it's great to see him in the chat. He's an amazing coworker to have on a team because he's always problem solving and has insightful thoughts. So good to see him here today. And so hopefully with the Q&A, he can also provide some insights if folks have questions about the work we did at ByteDance. So titled this one From 2 Days to 2 Hours. That is no exaggeration. We were designing AI-assisted research workflows at ByteDance. I'll go into more of that with a kind of a mock data study that we did. Can't show the proprietary data, but I can show you an idea of what we were doing on a normal basis and how we're able to get that process down from 2 days to 2 hours. But first, some of the contents we'll go over. So I'll talk about the background. So we have some basic understanding of artificial intelligence, and particularly large language models, LLMs, how SFT data works into that. An important component of this, what we call prompt engineering. That's a crucial part to understand about how to get these AI-assisted workflows working for you. And like I said, we'll go into that case study that we did at ByteDance with Michael taking the lead. And then I'll talk a little bit about deep research, just one of the newer modes of AI that also produces reports. Talk about some of the risk with that mode, as well as the rewards of deep research. If you have used it yet, we'll take a poll to see. And then we'll wrap up with some takeaways and do our Q&A. So just a little background about me. Graduated in 2022 after a long sojourn at UC Berkeley with a PhD actually in English literature and dissertation actually on Black dandyism and Harlem Renaissance fiction. So don't know how I got into this space, but it happened. I was looking for work and I came across Scale AI, which is now mostly owned by Meta. But Scale AI has two subsidiaries, Remote Task and Outlier. I was working for Outlier. They do a lot of contract work, and this is important. A lot of the AI field is undergirded and supported by human laborers, and they do what we call data annotation. And it's often reading the output of an AI's response and grading it or evaluating it, and by annotating it, putting notes on it, and seeing what's working, what's not working. So Scale AI is a company that features or that specializes in data annotation. And so a lot of AI companies will turn to Scale AI to hire workers to do that grunt work, that groundwork and operations work. And so I did a bit of that, got my feet wet into AI, and then saw there was a position open at ByteDance. A small team of writers were hired. ByteDance, as you know, is an app developer, and the most famous app Dustin mentioned is TikTok or Douyin. It's the Chinese version. They're making apps every day. And so they also have the video editing app CapCut. There's also their mobile app Lemonade. But they're a very successful company. And with that success, they decided to start creating their own AI models to incorporate into their software. So our team was created in 2024 to help improve the data, to do data annotation in-house, as well as sometimes to oversee vendors and their projects to improve the research. And that's where this case study comes from. We were constantly doing what we called rapid evaluations of evaluating how well a newer model or a test model was performing. We'd have to turn around a report in 2 days. And so with an internal AI model, we were able to reduce that from 2 days to 2 hours. So just a bit background. So AI at its basic feature is an algorithm, a predictive algorithm, and lots of data. So those algorithms help models determine how to construct the next word, sentence, or answer of a response. And that's often based on the data, including the training data that's used to improve the AI's response or to improve its intelligence, you could say. AI exists in three different modes. So we talk about LLMs, those are large language models. They're using mostly language. So your typical chat bots, you're talking to it, you're writing things down, it writes back to you. But AI also includes audio and video processing. Some AI models are doing 2 or 3 of those at once. And then AI engineers are using system prompts in their models to sometimes control the personality or to dictate the personality of the chatbot and other parameters of that model. So with that, some models are engineered to perform accurately, while others are engineered to perform for speed. Rarely both happen at the same time. It's important to keep track. So when you go to Claude or Gemini, you may see different models available to you. They have a fast model, they have a thinking model. And what that means is if you want a really good, robust answer on a deep prompt with lots of parameters, you may want that thinking model, but it may take more time. So if you have a simple question that doesn't have that many parameters and you want a quick answer, those faster, lighter models may be more useful. And knowing how those models work and the kind of task you need is also a very important feature. So we'll talk a little about that in the case study, finding the right model for your needs. So like I said, typically when we interface with the AI model, we're writing that user prompt. It goes into the model, we get that response. But what happens when AI models generate incorrect responses? So that's what we call machine learning. That's where AI models are trained to improve their ability to perform tasks. And those tasks may include web search or retrieval of information from those web searches. We call it RAG or retrieval augmented generation. They maybe include summarization. For the longest time, AI models were touted as good summarizers until people realized they sometimes miss the middle of a text or middle of a paper. They're getting better now. But it also includes categorization tasks, mathematical calculations, and report writing, and a bunch of other tasks. And so human annotators, as I said before, with the work of Scale AI and others, they serve as important evaluators of a model's success, although this process, to a limited degree, can be automated too. Recently, in the past year, we've seen folks be able to use another AI to judge another AI, what we call LLM as judge. So I like to use this pictures to kind of give a sense of how I thought of my work. I was in education for a while doing grad school. I also taught English for a while. At times I realized I felt like I was teaching a child. AI is like a young student. It's constantly taking in new information. It may get lots of things wrong. And we are there as the teachers to have to instruct and guide it towards finding the right response. And so if you think of that as your primary kind of relationship to AI, you may realize if it's like a child, you may have to spell out those instructions with clarity, be conscious of the language you're using so that the AI can produce the response you need. Of course, Alex in this picture, yeah, I'm the black guy. Just, yeah, okay, cool. So case study, like let's go into the case study and some data. I've created some mock data to give you a sense of the work we're doing at ByteDance. But before we do, Dustin has a little poll we can run just to get a sense of which AI models people prefer to use for work. And so Claude definitely doesn't quite have the majority, but has the lead for sure. And then ChatGPT follow behind. Gemini, I'm kind of surprised by it. We use Gemini a bit at ByteDance actually for some other duties, or just to have another AI to test things out. Microsoft Copilot, but trying to use Microsoft Copilot recently. Yeah, it's doing.
Yeah, Copilot. Yeah.
And there's some other models that folks can fill us in later on as well. Let's talk about the A/B testing. So oftentimes at ByteDance, we were doing A/B testing and we call it rapid evaluations. And the idea was that the team often had two models, one that was currently in production and one that was in testing. And our engineers needed us to test that newer testing model to see how well it was performing against the production model with the hope that it would perform better. And if not, why? So they could pinpoint issues that they could zero in on with more experiments and research. So those evaluations usually involve preference or ranking and scoring. That was usually our quantitative data. So which model performed well in this response, A or B, and there'd be some dimensions with that. So sometimes we'd categorize how well it was doing with its accuracy or instruction following or its formatting of its response. And we give those a metric score as well, which we use in our quantitative results. But we'd also have a written rationale, also very important. And we would use that for some qualitative analysis. So in the wonderful work that Michael led, I was involved with the qualitative analysis part of figuring out how to get that workflow down. And we had some of our analysts involved. Like I said, so in spring 2025, we started using an internal AI model at ByteDance called Lark AI. I'm hoping they'll release it at some point. It's still not publicly available. I'm going to use Claude AI today, but I've been told that Airtable, Notion AI, or Julius AI may be interesting comparative models. They are very robust, research-specific AI models. I haven't had time to look into them because they have pricing involved, but I'm going to use Claude today because it's more accessible to see. But some of the benefits of Lark was that because we're using internal ByteDance reports and data, it had a sense of what a ByteDance report would look like. And it allows you to change some things as if you're working in a Microsoft Word document. So I'll show you a bit of what we could do within Claude, the limitations in Claude, but also how Claude excels. And it's really up to you to figure out which model works best for you for the work that you're doing and to make that case to your supervisors, or if you aren't a supervisor yourself, to go test out the models that work well for your workflow. That's an important part. And we could talk about that later on in Q&A or at the meetup itself. So keep on going. Of course, as I said, reports aimed at identifying success and failure points. That's the one we want to remember. Which model succeeds and why or why not. So prompt engineering became very important for us, we realized. And with prompt engineering, you're arranging your prompt into a set of precise instructions that help the model logically work through a complex task. And the most well-known PE framework or prompt engineering framework is one called COSTAR. So let me show you what COSTAR looks like, what it means, and how it plays out here. So COSTAR is a cool framework, and there are other PE frameworks you can look up online and check out. But COSTAR stands for context, objective, style, tone, audience, and response. Believe it or not, the more specific information you give the AI model, the more targeted its response could be. So with COSTAR, you're really asking for some really targeted information and response. So one, you give the model the context, provide the baseline background information about the scenario or task that you're using or that you're generating your task from. And then give it your objective, right? So state the exact goal or task you want the AI to achieve. As I said before, AIs have been trained on summarization, categorization, mathematical calculations. Being explicit about those tasks is very helpful for the AI so it can keep track of all the things you need to get done. And then think about the style. So you can specify the desired writing style or expert persona to emulate. So you may want your response to sound like a marketer or an academic or like Ernest Hemingway. Yeah, AIs can do those things decently well. You could talk about the tone. So you can set the emotional attitude or sentiment of the response. Do you want a professional tone? Do you want an empathetic tone? Do you want a persuasive or urgent tone? The AI then will choose syntax and word choices that reflect that tone, which may be very important for your report writing. If you want business style report writing or an academic style report writing, you want to tailor that response or that report to your audiences, right? And then, of course, mentioning who your audience is. Believe it or not, AIs have been trained on writing based on audience because your vocabulary may change. The rationale or the rhetoric you use may change. If you're talking to a 5-year-old about how the federal government passes a bill, that language may change if you're talking to a college graduate instead, or talking to a congressional person or a congressional aide. So the AI can actually take that information and use it to make its predictive algorithm choose the right words for the right response. And then lastly, you can talk about the response. You can tell the exact output format even down to the file type or any structural constraints you have. So oftentimes you'll see in the report, you can identify the different parts of the report you want. Do you want an executive summary at the top? Do you want a conclusion at the bottom? Do you want 3 takeaways in your conclusion? Do you want bulleted points in a certain part of your headings or what have you in your report? You can be that specific with the AI to get the response you want. So what we did at ByteDance, with all that in mind, taking COSTAR as a framework, we had to sit down first and figure out, what are we doing? What's our process so that we can identify it and itemize it for the AI? So we sat down and created clear goals. We knew we wanted a report, and we had some examples of what our previous reports had looked like for our rapid evaluations. And then we kind of mapped out the process. This is where Michael was instrumental. And sitting down with us, he got together our analysts to do the quantitative reasoning. He sat down and looked at our reports and the formatting. I sat down and looked at our qualitative reasoning, and we kind of mapped out the process. What does this workflow look like for us? So then we know how to instruct the AI model in that workflow. And then we create a PE framework, which I don't think we end up using COSTAR. Michael may have better memory than I do. We used a kind of adaptation of certain kind of PEs to use in our prompts. But we built prompts that then feed the AI to get the different reports, parts of the report we wanted. And then we already had Lark AI available as a model for us. But as I said, you want to think about the model you're using, and we'll go through some of that in Claude and Gemini. So if you want a fast model or a thinking model, all of that may be very important for the kind of output and the accuracy of the response you get. And here's a cool thing. You can choose your data. So if you have examples of previous reports, whether you've written them or a colleague has written them, or you found a great paper on a repository or archive or library, you can upload that with your data and tell your AI, hey, here's an example of data that I want to use. And you can even itemize, I like what they do in this executive summary on this paper. I like the models or graphs they're using or how they put their table together in their data. You can upload that with your data and instruct the AI to follow that data as a model. Because once again, the model has been trained on existing data, but you can bring in your own data to help train the model to get the response you want. And then it's a matter of just trying it out your prompt, plugging it in, seeing what happens, and revise as you go. Just because you have a prompt and you get one response doesn't mean, as you know, it's the end of the conversation. It may be a multi-round conversation, so you may have to keep revising things with more and more prompts to get the desired output you want. And that's the process we went through. I'm going to show you now with some of the data we have. By the way, if you have questions along the way, please feel free to pepper them. If they're short questions, I can definitely answer them. If they're longer questions, we'll save them for Q&A. But I'm going to keep on going for now. So with our case study, as I say, we're typically doing A/B testing. We had 2 models, one in production, one in testing. With this mock case study I made one with 10 prompts. And so that means we're going to feed 10 prompts to model A, 10 prompts to model B, and get a total of 20 responses. With this particular project, or this particular mock case, we'll have 3 human annotators. So each human annotator will evaluate each response. So we get a total of 60 scores, and we'll take the average of this score. This helps to keep track of any bias or inconsistency in evaluations. And then, of course, there's some GSP preference. So which model's response was preferred, A or B? You'll see that in the data. And then we had some numbers, some metrics, some numerical scores to put down. So with the preference for A and B, how much do we like A's response? Would we go to 5 out of the highest possible score, or 1? That would be very useful too, as you can imagine, because not all preferred scores have a high quality, And then we had additional dimensions we also use with the Likert scale of 1 to 5, like accuracy or format. But we also have binary scoring. So we use this for 1-dimension instruction following, yes or no, did the model complete the instructions or not. That's simple binary. And then, as I said, that written rationale, so very important, we use for some qualitative analysis as well. Let me show you some of that data. So here's just an example of 10 prompts I had an AI make up for me. Imagine these are kind of the prompts that a college student would put in. These are kind of the college research essays you might see. So compare the causes of the French Revolution and the American Revolution, cite specific events, or analyze the symbolism of the green light in the Great Gatsby, use 2 to 3 paragraphs. So just 10 example prompts that we feed to each model. These are very much geared towards college essays, you can see. And then, so we have the way the scoring works out. So as I showed you, the prompts are numbered there, but we have 3 annotators evaluating them and giving their scores on those. As you'll see with that first prompt, P01, annotator 1 and 2 preferred A, but annotator 3 didn't have a preference for either one, gave it a tie score. And then you can see the breakdown of the dimensions. So A's format score was 544, and you have accuracy and so forth. All this data I'll make available to you for you all to see, but just want to show you what some of the data that we dealt with in our kind of rapid evaluations. I'll keep going. So here's what the rationale would have looked like. So once again, with prompt 1 and 2, for example, here, the annotators for the most part preferred A, and we'll explain in their rationale why they preferred model A or what were the weaknesses in the other model. This data became very useful for our qualitative analysis that we would tie to our quantitative analysis when we were doing our rapid evaluations. Here's some of the kind of scoring, noting the difference in score. And as you see, model A wins 21, whereas model B gets only 5 preferences, and there was 4 ties there. Just some more of the data there. And then model A seems to be winning and having more successful performance with this particular prompt set. Now, here's an important strategy that we also realized that I mentioned this before, but we realized for our team creating our reports, we had to break down the prompt into 3 separate prompts. I think this was actually Michael's genius idea too. And like I said, Michael could speak more to this, but we had a separate quantitative analysis prompt because we realized with quantitative analysis, there's specific things we want to look at and get the model to work on. So it may be sums or counts of how many preferences of data, averages or means, some statistical significance testing, perhaps some binary dimension analysis, and then a matter of putting that data into tables and data visualizations, which is very important. So we separated a separate quantitative analysis prompt just to deal with that kind of work because it's so much important work to get right for the model response. And then we had a separate qualitative analysis prompt. This was the one I worked on, where we were trying to find recurrent themes in the rationales across all the annotators, any themes about strengths or weakness in the model, themes around sums or counts maybe, or quotations, how to grab the quotations from the rationale and incorporate it into the report effectively, and then linking that, as I said, to quantitative analysis. So this is an important thing to isolate and to specify for the model when it came to incorporating that into the report. And then Michael had the genius idea. Then we use that final report formatting prompt to bring it all together into a report. That necessitated its own separate prompt to identify to the model what are the parts of the report we need, what should go first or second. And then, as I said before, do we want an executive summary at the top? Maybe there are bullet point takeaways that we want our researchers to read at the very top. What do we want in our conclusion? Spelling that out produced more consistent data for us. Because if you don't spell those things out, each time you run your prompt, it could be the same prompt, but you might get something slightly different from your model. So the more you specify those things, the more you can consistently get the same response from your model. So I'm going to show you some examples of these prompts now. So get out of this a bit. So I cooked this up in Claude using the COSTAR format. But as you see, the COSTAR format is broken down things into the different parts. So context, an AI evaluation team has run an A/B comparison between 2 conversational AI models, Model A and Model B, on a set of high school humanities prompts spanning history, English literature, social studies, art history. Those are the domains of knowledge we call them. Each prompt was reviewed by 3 independent annotators, producing 30 paired annotations. Annotators picked a winner, Model A, B, or tie, scored each model on format, accuracy, and overall quality on a 1 to 5 scale, marked the instruction following as yes or no, and wrote a rationale. So what the context is really doing is laying out, here's the experiment. Here's how we generate the data you're going to see. And then you'll see in that next paragraph actually is, here's the data, because we actually imported the Excel sheet of data, and we explain the column headings so the model knows where to find the data corresponding to that information before or above into which respective columns have that data to do its analysis with that guessing. And then as you see, there's the objective. And the objective is very interesting, right? Numbered list of different tasks that we want the model to do for the quantitative reasoning part and being very specific about that. And then we have our style, tone, audience, and response, and so forth and so forth. I'll show you now the qualitative one. Similar, still using COSTAR, still identifying the same kind of context, but here we specify there's a full annotation table with the rationale text in the Excel spreadsheet. And then the objectives are laid out in numbered list here. But then you have style once again, which probably will be similar, tone probably similar, audience as well as response very similar. But using that COSTAR format as well from the PE. And then you have the formatting prompt that we would create. Similar, but then spelling out how to lay out the actual parts of the report. So you see, breaking down each prompt, quantitative, qualitative and report formatting was what we realized was helpful for us in our case. Go back to make this slideshow active here. So as I said before, one of the cool things you can do, not only uploading perhaps your data, whether it's quantitative or qualitative or a mix of that, you can attach examples of what you want your report or your response to look like. So whether it's someone else's report, your own reports, the more you upload to the AI, the more it gets a sense of your style and the report writing you want. And you can specify exactly what in that example data you like that you want to emulate in response. Once again, it's that you're the teacher and the AI model is the student. So you're teaching it the styles and things that you need for your response. And you'll know, for those of you who use these AI chatbots frequently, when you make your own profile in Gemini or Claude, it's going to keep track of your needs. So this data, it keeps track of your needs and it remembers who you are. That's part of the machine learning that we're doing when we actively engage with the AI model. And I did some research myself. I haven't tried out these models, but when it comes to, I think, data analysis and the kind of research we're doing, the general purpose LLM chatbots we're all very familiar with. There's some other more specialized AI tools that are coming out. I have not looked at them all. These are just some suggestions that I did some research on. But if anyone has used these, please let us know in the Q&A. I'd be curious to see which ones are working, which ones are not. There's some pricing models involved as well in that, though. But I'm very curious to see if anyone's used Julius or Airtable, or either other these kind of more research-specific AI models that are out and available on the market, to see how well they work for you. So lastly, I'm going to talk about deep research, but I want to take a quick poll before. But any questions so far about what I went over that case study? Just understanding some of our workflow, prompt engineering, how it works out. Any questions so far?
Khalil, actually, yeah, so there's one question. So if you're breaking your prompts, because you were talking about breaking your prompt in between the quantitative and qualitative data sources, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, this one. So the question is, if you're breaking up those prompts in between those two data sets, what do you do when you want the AI to look at both data sets at the same time, right? Like, so kind of the example being, after the user uses your product, they provide you a 1 out of 5 satisfaction rating, and then they have an open end to explain why they provided that answer.
Yeah.
So what do you? So yeah, how do you approach it in that case when you want kind
Yeah, I
of
think
the AI to look at both data sets?
right. Great question. I think so. This is where I'll once again shout out to Michael because he was really a genius on this. We realized we had to run the quantitative analysis first, and then, as you're seeing here, the qualitative analysis of the rationale points back to the findings we had in the quantitative analysis. So I think it's the matter of running those numbers first and then telling the model in the same session, all right, let's look at the rationale, the language the user has given us, and point it back to anything you're seeing in those overall metrics. So the order of the analysis may be very important, but if you're doing it all in the same chat session, your model should remember that, and you can point back to, hey, in that previous moment, we did that previous prompt, we did some quantitative analysis. Now here's the qualitative, here's the language. Please point back and bolster that by the metrics that we're seeing. That's the idea. The order of the prompts you're using. That's a very good question.
Got it. Okay, yeah. So kind of continuing the conversation and having the AI remember the previous prompts.
It will.
Then
It
that's
will
kind of
totally
the
remember. Yeah,
yeah,
just gotta tell it, hey, we just did this. Let's keep on going. That's the beauty of
right.
doing the same. If you're in the same conversation with your chatbot, if you're saving your profile, is also very important. The AI models will remember.
Right. Also, another question. So, how are you auditing the quality of the qualitative analysis?
Yeah.
Do you have a formal way that you approach this after setting up this process?
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
also great
yeah.
question. I mean, you at the end of the day, you have to read through the response you've received from your AI to make sure it's up to your standards. And that's why if you have some reports you've done already and you know specifically what you want your model to do, it'll make it easier to program that into your PE. But you have to just read through things and make sure the model has actually done things that you requested. And if not, you can tell the model, hey, you missed something. You can literally just talk back to it and say, hey, you got this wrong, please review your work. We did that many times. You can actually put a review section in your PE where you want your model to review what you've done, but you could just talk back to your model and say, hey, something's missing here. Did you make sure to do this? Did you make sure to do this? Double check your work. those action items the models understand perfectly well. How many times have you used deep research mode in the last year, if at all?
Yeah, lots of 0 to 5 and a few 10 to 20 times, but no 20 or more for using deep research in the last year.
Okay, so people have some familiarity with it, but using it or not. So let's just talk about deep research quickly. So just to make sure we're on the same page, AI models that contain deep research modes allow users to input an open or closed-ended prompt that requires extensive research, synthesizing information from research and creating a comprehensive report. So actually some of those prompts I used in the case study could be considered deep research prompts because they're asking these open-ended questions. So typical college essays, they required explaining things, making an argument, that thesis, and then backing it up with research and analysis of your research, and you make a conclusion, tying that all together in logical flow is deep research mode. But there are some risks with that. There's a lot of risk. And so Michael, another coworker, and our product manager at ByteDance have worked extensively on trying to understand what some of the risks are and pain points of deep research modes. So I just want to introduce people to that. So as an experiment, I just asked Google Gemini and Claude AI to produce deep research reports about deep research. And so let me show you both the prompts and the responses I found and talk about the risk and rewards of that. So I asked Gemini, leverage what you know about the current research problems and solutions in the realm of deep research for agentic AI models. Give me a list of 10 experiments my team can run to teach our agentic AI model how to answer deep research prompts. And so, those who are not familiar, but this is what Claude does. Claude will then, as you're seeing, itemize the task it's going over, just like we put in the COSTAR prompt. It's telling you it's defining the scope of what that means. It's analyzing, it's researching, and then, it'll tell you in a few minutes. So this is what I meant by different models work differently. Deep research models are not trained for speed. They're trained for depth and accuracy. So it takes time to produce those reports, right? But that's because of all the different complex tasks involved in deep research. And so this is what Gemini does. Let me go show you actually the Gemini report I got. And of course, using Gemini, for those of you who haven't used it, it's really great because it's integrated well with Google Drive and Google Docs. So you can quickly export your doc or your report as a Google Doc, and it's headed. And I kind of like the formatting of Google Gemini reports a lot more, but there may be other issues. But here's what it looks like when you kind of export it out as a Google Doc, and they have kind of subheadings there as well. And I'll make this all available. Going back to the slideshow, here's the conversation I had with Claude, a little different. So now I was in the same conversation with Claude about this, but I want to show my webinar audience deep research mode. Prepare me a report on the history and current trends in deep research. I identified what topics I wanted there. I also want a section on the risk and rewards of deep research. For example, I know deep research modes can search the internet very quickly, but I also know that there are source reliability and source access problems that may hinder the success. I also know different companies tout the closed versus open-ended prompts. Also, let me know which domains work well for deep research, the different AI companies that have deep research modes in their models. Keep your research paper to under 10 pages. Please include a good reference page, and you are encouraged to find papers on arXiv. It's a great open repository for scientific studies, including lots of AI and computer science related stuff. I know that Scale AI and Meta, Google, Perplexity, and a few other companies that have written deep research benchmarks between 2025 and now. That's giving some time constraints and telling specific papers to check out. So feel free to check those out. And then Claude asked a follow-up question, which is also very interesting. Great topic, it said, but I wanted to know my output format. That was the N, that's the R response of COSTAR, right? So would you prefer a Word doc or PDF file or Markdown file? And also ask for audience, right? Remember the A in COSTAR framework. So is the webinar audience more technical or more general knowledge? And then ask if it should exclude or specifically emphasize certain things, whether it's legal, healthcare, or finance issues, or keep it general purpose. So notice some chatbots will ask you follow-up questions. And then, as you see, and this kind of Gemini didn't show its hand as well, but I kind of like Claude a little more because Claude showed me it researched 229 sources and took a total of 8 minutes and 8 seconds. This, of course, gives more transparency to its process and helps to win people over if Claude's doing it faster than other models, right? And so, let me then show you the report real quick that Claude gave me. Now, like I said, I don't like Claude's format. I preferred Google Gemini's format. Gemini's format looked more like a report to me. I used to be an English professor and teacher. If I saw Gemini's format, I'd say, all right, that's a good essay. If I saw this from Claude with lots of bullet points, I'm like, what are we doing here? I don't know what's going on. But Claude preferred bullet points. It gave me a TLDR at the beginning, which I would prefer to be a summary maybe, or executive summary maybe. But it imagined different kind of audience where TLDR actually translates to something. I don't know what made that choice. But they kind of broke down the different subsections later on. And as I specified in that prompt, keep it under 10 pages, which it did. I think my Gemini report was like 19 pages, which is amazing. I still think this is amazing. We have models spitting out legible reports in a matter of minutes, which would have normally taken me 2 weeks if I prepped myself in college, 2 days if I did, and 2 hours if I was doing the day before. So it's kind of amazing what these models can do in a matter of time, but there are lots of problems with what it does. So it can be very useful for research, but I want to make sure people are aware of the pitfalls with deep research. So as you saw in one of those slides, I mentioned this source reliability and hallucinations. So within minutes, deep research modes can synthesize hundreds of sources. However, these modes don't always factor the reliability of the sources. And so this is very important to understand about the architecture of AI. As we said before, AI is algorithm and data. Lots of that data has been scraped from the internet. Not all of the data on the internet is accessible to AI companies. There are lots of paywalls out there for very good research. JSTOR is behind a paywall. The New York Times is behind a paywall. More and more of these high reliable sources are behind paywalls. AI companies have gotten in trouble for stealing some of that copywritten data. Google was long in a dispute with academic publishers a decade ago about this data. These AI companies know they need highly reliable data and sophisticated data, but it isn't always available. What's available to them for free is Wikipedia, which is low source reliability, anyone would tell you. Reddit posts and comments, which is it's Reddit, or YouTube comments. In the case of ByteDance, it was TikTok comments. So there's a source reliability issue sometimes with deep research. It's not like going to the library and reading books and papers. The limitations are very real for what these AI models and deep research modes can access, and they haven't quite figured out how to rank the reliability of those sources. So those are things to watch out for. Those are real problems between source access and source reliability to be very aware of. Two is the logic and reasoning. So while DR agents can spit out dozens of pages in minutes, you have to read through to check the logic and reasoning. It's not always as robust or coherent as it should be. Does the paper properly cite the information from its sources and incorporate that into its logical flow in its report? What the work that Michael and I did at ByteDance, we saw lots of issues around that as well. So you have to be very well aware of that. And the drive is to get that report out as soon as possible. But if you don't read it, you may get caught with non-factual information or incorrect information. And then lastly, being aware of the domains, the kind of types of knowledge that you're asking your models for. Certain models are preferred over others because of the domain of knowledge. Do they have access to law libraries or medical information or finance information? That's also very important because if that's their training data, then the model can speak authoritatively about those issues. But if it doesn't have access to that training data, which isn't always transparent, you're going to run into issues when the model wants to obey its commands and give you that report, but how reliable is the information? So in some domains, there are more AI-specific tools being used. I know in medicine, they have more AI-specific tools being used, probably because they've arranged to get access to medical journals. But those general chatbots like Claude, Gemini, they might not have that access. So be aware of what topics or what subject fields you're asking for your AI. It may dictate the accuracy of the information it presents. Those are just a few things, and we want to hit to the Q&A in a moment, but just a few takeaways is really finding the right model for your work and your price point. Don't forget, you can upload examples of the type of responses you want to see when you write your prompts for any small or big prompts. Prompt engineering is your friend. Check out COSTAR, check out other formats. Also have multi-shot prompting, which is when you put examples in your prompt. At the end of the day, you have to try out things, revise as you go, and document. You can always be in a conversation with the AI. Usually the AI can keep track of 30 rounds of conversation until it forgets, but some of the better chatbots can have projects now where you can lump your prompts into one topic or project that the model that can organize its thoughts around. Use those to your advantage, right? Deep research, as I said, is prone to hallucinations. And by all means, check the references and sources that you get from AI models. That's super important to make sure that things are legible and correct. With that, I thank you for your time. We'll have a Q&A, and I'll drop in the chat a link to this deck as well as the mock research I did if you want to try it out for yourself. It's all free to check out for yourself. But if you have any questions, let's talk and share the information we found so far about how to use AI assisted workflows.
So yeah, Khalil, a few more questions. So one of them, how many tokens and what total cost does it typically take before you're satisfied with the final deep research reports?
That is such a great question. I do not know. And this is the problem I had at ByteDance because we were using internal models and they gave us free reign. They just says go for it. But that's a very good question. So I think with that, you want to keep in mind when you write your prompts to be as concise as possible, right? The more words you're using, the more tokens you end up using. You've got to think about that for sure. But I have to admit, that's one area in my work. I haven't even thought about keeping track of tokens and how that plays into price because we work with internal models. But it's something to keep track of. Just make sure your prompts are as nimble and efficient as they can be, because that'll be an issue for sure. And if that comes down to it, I would think about some of those more research specific AI models and see what they offer because they may be able to do more with less. They may know the kind of research you want. They may have an agent for making tables, an agent for making visualizations, and that may save you more time in the long run. So something to think about for sure.
Yeah. Um, okay. Also, so you talked about using deep research with publicly available data on the internet. What about using your own data? Especially as researchers, we might have transcripts from interviews, survey data in Excel or in Sheets. Does that process change if you're uploading your own data? Like what does that look like?
So the two things to keep track. So yes, you can upload your own data as much as you can. What a limitation it has on the chatbot. I think those chatbots will take up to 30 uploaded files in that single prompt. You can definitely use that and just point the model to the file names. You may have to explain what each of those files is, what it contains, just to help the model source through the information or synthesize information carefully. But definitely do that. It's a great thing to do. The issue I think is also copyright protections. I would not trust an AI company with your company's data. So you want to look into issues around copyright. I don't have exact answers for that because I'm not necessarily in legal, but something to keep track of with your company about the legal ramifications of sharing that data with an AI company. And you may want to see if they have some parameters and ways you can have your own data be kept safe somehow. I don't know those technical answers, unfortunately, but something to definitely look into and keep track of.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine if you're using it for your company data, you would need some kind of enterprise accounts
Right,
or, something so that it's not training the models
right,
with your private data from your company, right?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Um, and then, so, you kind of showed how it can produce text specific reports.
Mhm,
What about like presentations, right? Like as researchers, we do a lot of PowerPoints, a lot of Google Slides.
mhm.
Our stakeholders aren't going to read, a big lengthy text only report, right? So we have
Mhm.
to make it visually appealing.
Yeah.
Like what's kind of the process there? Do you have any recommendations on that?
Yeah, I think it's a similar one. I would definitely test it out with Claude. I didn't have Claude make a presentation for me, but Claude is getting so sophisticated with the output format, the type of files you can request from it, that I think it may be worth testing out with Claude to see what you get from it. With our reports, we're definitely using visualizations at times, and so these models can handle visualizations. The more you can be specific about the type of graphs and visualizations you want, the better. So the color of the graphs, what's on your X and Y axis, the scale of things, those specifications are very helpful because if not, if you use the same prompt, you may get a different response from your AI model. And there may be, once again, checking out those more research specific AI models that I mentioned in that list that may have more tools available for you, may be better. Like I said, at ByteDance, we had some internal AI and it was fairly sophisticated because it was the training data was our own reports. But it may be about finding the right AI for the kind of work you want to do when it comes to slides. But try Claude. I think Claude can handle some great things.
Yeah. And is that also kind of what you're saying too about thinking about your quantitative analysis, qualitative analysis, and reporting prompting is like three separate stages, right?
Yeah,
As
yeah.
opposed to trying to do it all in one fell swoop. Like maybe we use like a deep research mode, we get like this big text only report, and then we create another prompt to then like format that in a PowerPoint or
Exactly.
that kind of thing.
That's exactly what you may have to do.
Like,
Yep. exactly.
Yeah.
And that is just that you don't want to overload the model with too many tasks in one prompt. It may skip some, can get confused, and so chunking it up is a bit easier with a separate prompt. But that's a great workflow idea.
So AI is not the silver bullet that all the marketing hype and algorithms keep pushing. It's not going to just do it all in one prompt. Khalil.
No, it will not. Which also means no, AI will not replace us. It can't replace us. No, of course not. Yeah, tell your supervisors that we need this great tool, but no, it can't do it all. No.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think you kind of highlighted that too with the human annotators that you talked about, right? At ByteDance is like when you guys were training those models is I mean the human aspects to both the training the AI as well as using the AI to get these outputs, these research report outputs. I mean the human element in is still very much a big part of that, right? Like I know we get a lot of like doom and gloom,
Yeah.
stuff. That stuff seems to go viral a lot, right,
Yeah.
on the internet. But it sounds like what you're saying is like that human component, like whether you're talking, building the models or getting the outputs from the models, like is still going to be very critical, is what you're saying.
Yes, because our
Yeah,
work is very complex. So we have to teach these models is very complex workflows that we use on a daily basis. Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's comforting. That's
Yeah.
I think. Okay. While we were chatting, let's see. Another question came in. What tasks still require substantial human involvement? Yeah, great question.
I mean, it's I would say there's a whole list of tasks that AI models are trained to do. Like I said, so categorization, summarization. You could some of the early days of AI with the ChatGPT revolution happening a few years ago. So summarization, it's pretty good at. It's getting better. It's that researching still needs human involvement, right? Like I said, the model actually only has access to digital repositories, and even then there are paywalls. So it still will take a human being to actually go sometimes and find the library information or the information that the models cannot access. So it's so much, and I can't honestly answer that question. We're still figuring it out, and it's a shame that the models and those companies aren't as transparent as they should be about the limitations of their models. Of course, that wouldn't work for their profit sharing and their profit goals. But we're still figuring out what the model can do and what it needs with human intervention, what humans are better at doing. It's trial and error at this point.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, I think we got all the questions right in time, Khalil. So thanks again. Super helpful insights.